Hello, viewers and listeners of Local 3's podcast, Breaking Ground. Today I'm pleased to have with us the Director of the Public Employees Unit, Tim Neep, and the Senior Business Agent, Mike Eggener. We're going to talk a little bit today about how the Local 3 Public Employee Division fits into the overall Local 3 fold. And I want to hear from both of you directly about what you do for your thousands of members every day on the public employee side. But first, a little bit of background. Many of us already know that Local 3 began representing construction workers in 1939 in California and Nevada. And this representation would later spread to public employees in 1969. Now, the Public Employee Division has been a mainstay for Local 3's jurisdiction because presently today we represent about 7,000 members in about 200 specific units across Northern California, Nevada, and Utah. And this became possible because of the passage of the Myers-Milius-Brown Act in 1968, which gave public employees the right to negotiate their wages, contracts, and working conditions. But even with its passing back in those days, Local 3 had an uphill battle because they had to make these cities and counties and districts accountable and make sure that they were following the rules of this act. By 1969, then business manager Al Clem said, I'm going to make public employees a big part of Local 3's representation. And so it became a very widespread organizing campaign from the areas of Fresno, Kings, San Joaquin, Siskiyou, Sutter, Alameda, Oakland, San Jose, Santa Clara, Stockton. And by 1970, OE3 was a driving force in representing public employees. And then one more huge historical moment in the history of Local 3's public employees was in 1977 when the County Employees Management Association affiliated with Local 3. And this was a group of about 317 managers and supervisors. And at that time, it became the largest management unit in state history to be represented by a union. It's not well known because Local 3 is most often viewed as a construction industry, but about 1/3 of Local 3's membership are public employees and craft maintenance workers. That's the state unit, Unit 12. So today the battles and victories for Local 3's public employee department continue, and Tim and Mike, you both played a major role in this.
My name is Tim Neep, and I started in construction about 1985. I was actually in the private sector as a mechanic, and had very much interest in getting into the union. And one of the things that drove me into that part of this business was I always wanted representation. What I mean by that is they would have reps that would come out to our job sites, and we'd sit around a big break table at lunch and stuff like that. A couple of guys would say, wow, hey, a rep came out today, and I was like, wow, that's cool. So I thought, well, you know what, I want to have that opportunity to go out and talk to the members. Quite a journey to get on staff. What I mean by that is, make sure I was involved with the politics and the late nights, and I think that's real relevant to this job. Matter of fact, now I see how relevant it is to this job to learn all those aspects of it and to, again, be plugged into Local 3 and understand the structure of that. The opportunity opened up, and I came to work for Local 3 as a business agent in the construction side, because that's where I started. We also have a bargaining unit under the DILS Act, and it's Unit 12. It's all state employees. It's a public employee entity as well. I was very much interested in that. It seemed to be a lot of the same work. What I mean by that is maintenance, which is very similar to our construction side of this organization. So I was just started in this organization on the representation side, and I was dealing with a Unit 12 person, a state employee, Caltrans. And a gentleman said to me he didn't get paid, and I thought, wow, that's easily fixed. I'll go talk to your supervisor. And the supervisor said, okay, I'll make sure that that person gets paid. And unbeknown to me, a couple weeks passed, I got a phone call and said, I haven't got paid. And found out that's what actually introduced me to how much the same the work is, but the internal process to get things fixed was quite different.
And that's because you're at the mercy of all of these unique city, county, special districts that are managed by city councils or elected officials. and they are then at the mercy of how much money is available, and
That's
there's
right.
just a lot of different tiers of communication to solve those problems, and so you view that as a challenge.
Yes, with cities and counties and states, it's a tax base and it's what they work off of. And the employers, I think rightfully so, feel very much liable to that. They want to make sure that they're not spending taxpayers' money. As I moved on with this organization, I had the opportunity to move up into the director's spot for Local 3 under the state bargaining unit. And I did that for a number of years. Then I had an opportunity to actually be the director for all 4 operating engineers locals in California.
So those are the 4 unions that represent the Unit 12 Plants and Maintenance Division throughout the state.
And again, coming together as one, utilizing our structure as one was very beneficial for the membership. And so I was able to work through the grievance process with that, and then also the arbitrations for all 4 locals.
And so you were involved in that and sort of bringing a consistency to all of these different units across the state. And
Right.
then you transitioned into...
Public employees, yeah, and just real quick on this, that gave me a very good background as public employees go and how the laws work around that. Again, if you go back to the example I gave about the paycheck piece.
Did you ever give that guy his paycheck?
Yeah, I did actually, and got him a little bit extra money for that one. So what we have is we have the court systems, we have law enforcement, we represent hospitals, we represent road maintenance, we represent water, and that's just to mention a few.
So yes, Mike, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how it is that you became involved in representing public employees for Local 3?
Sure. My name is Michael Eggener. My story is a little bit different than Tim's. I'm actually from Wisconsin. How I got to California is I graduated from high school and I went to an all-boys high school that was a trade and technical school, which was kind of unique back in the day. It's no longer that way. My sister actually was one of the first females admitted, which created a problem for me as a senior. But we worked through that. So one day I found myself in the Marine Corps recruiting office asking them what they could offer me, and they just laughed at me. And then they signed me up and said, do you want to go to boot camp? Where do you want to go? We have 2. You can go to San Diego or you can go to the East Coast. I said, San Diego. I'm an 18-year-old. Girls, send me to San Diego. So I
went from Wisconsin to
San Diego.
Yeah, that's a culture shock.
Right. So I did my tour in the military. I spent a little bit of time with the 1st Marine Division, then I got sent to the Alameda Naval Air Station with the Marine Security Force there. So I got kind of a taste of law enforcement, but then when I got out of the military, because of my background, my father was a machinist. I went through an apprenticeship for 4 years, and I'm a journeyman machinist for 10 years. And I was actually part of the Machinist and Aerospace Workers Union for 10 years. My father-in-law was on the executive board, so I got indoctrinated there really well. But then, my biological clock was ticking. I was about 30, and I had always wanted to get into law enforcement, so I went to the police academy through Alameda County Sheriff's Department. And a unique story there, while working in the jail in a visiting capacity, I bumped into an inmate. When he turned around, it was the president of the local that I had belonged to as a machinist. He had been in custody for whatever, and it was kind of a different situation.
You're like, whoa.
He says, Mike, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I like work here. And
What are you
I said,
doing
what are you doing here? So anyway, I did that. I worked there a few years, and then I moved over to the city of Oakdale as a police officer there. I retired as a sergeant from there. I had good experience there. I did everything. I had a canine. I worked narcotics. I was on the SWAT team. I was the division commander of investigations for a while as an acting lieutenant. I got to fly out to Chicago and testify on a homicide case. So I had a lot of good experiences. I dealt with a lot of the state groups, the ATF, FBI, and different things like that. And at the time, we were members of OE3. So I'm a 31-year member of OE3. Got to be time for me to think about retiring. I had a couple of knee surgeries. That really does a job on your body, being out there doing the things that we did, plus from being in the military. So I applied for a position and was picked. I'm out of the Stockton office mainly. We try to pull people from the field into our organization because I firmly believe in the OE3 way. Like I said, 31 years, and so got on staff. I've been on staff for 11 years. Basically, Tim's assistant is the senior rep, so I have an office in Alameda as well. So I help him with all of the things that he's got going on, because it's hard keeping track on everybody.
Looking back at it all, I'm still here.
6 years is a long career to have seen a lot of change.
Yes.
You've been part of, a lot of city, county elections, different political movements in each city, to have understood the value of negotiating for these specific, very complicated units.
Right.
That requires a lot of, it's a skill.
I've learned that from across the table, negotiators on the other side, definitely officers, the current business manager, Dan Redding. Dan and I started around the same time. He started a little before I did. But I used to go to meetings with Dan when we were both business agents, and I'd go with Russ Burns, I'd go with Justin Diston. And I always tell my reps when they come in, it's really good if you take a piece that you enjoy out of these folks and their style and make it your own. I did mention I learned from the other side, because they had some really good negotiators on the state and public employee side. Can tell you I may not ask them out to lunch or something like that, but
you end up respecting them
very much
to
so.
some degree.
No, very much so. Yeah, they brought a lot to the table that I thought was it made me challenged, and made me had to really work through the process.
Like to be on top of your game.
Absolutely correct. Through this process, we have represented Local 3 as a organization that what I've always seen and what I've always tried to really maintain is we try not to do frivolous issues and grievances. There are some times where we have to bring these issues to the surface just to make sure that they're exposed, okay? But Local 3 has always been an organization that will hit the root of the problem. They will make sure that the grievances, arbitrations, litigation is very solid, and through that process we do have a lot of respect with the employers, with the politicians. They do understand that about Local 3, that we won't go out there and waste their time. I mentioned my father was in organized labor as well, and when I was 10 years old, he used to take me out on picket lines. So I've been around labor all my life, very much enjoy that. I learned as a young person, back in the day, you could take, maybe this was a common practice, but my dad would take me when I was 12 years old to a job site during summer vacation. And so he would tell me to go work with the guys, throwing scraps of wood in a loader bucket or something, and I would come around and sit down during break time, lunchtime, and I learned the lingo of tradespeople. It's actually, I believe that also makes me a very, very comfortable in this setting, and talking to these folks. A lot of the membership, they want to look at you as a business agent, and you don't really know what you're talking about, but been there, done that. So it does make me very credible at the bargaining table when I'm across the table. My members recognize that this guy understands what we do, and be able to represent them fully through that process. So had a lot of the employers that look at it the same way, he's a business agent, probably don't understand all about this, the trades and things, but I keep them on their toes for sure.
Well, we generally hire people who have had experience in the field, so that
That's
you have
right.
made that full circle connection.
Yes.
You know what those people are going through, and now you're working to represent them and take care of their needs. And you mentioned the units that you represent. I mean, these crews and these units, they become very close. They become like, little families, and they learn quickly as you educate them that together they have a much stronger voice than if they were by themselves. And that is one of the benefits of Local 3 representation for both the private and the public sector.
It's one thing for the negotiations over wages, benefits like health care and pensions and these types of things, but it also reaches even further than that to laws that we get passed that keep our membership safe. One comes to mind is the move-over bill that we fought for the state bargaining unit. Our folks were getting injured, fatalities, at the same rate as law enforcement, as the officers out there. And there used to be a saying, and it was actually quoted in the LA Times. It was said that for law enforcement, under these certain types of benefits that they have under this government code, it wasn't the passing of the bullets, it was the passing of the vehicles. And so a lot of these folks, a lot of our folks were getting, like I said, injured, fatalities. So we went after this move-over law. And essentially what that does for our membership is it gives our folks, God forbid something happens to them, their beneficiaries will receive at a minimum 50% of their salary for the rest of their life. In addition to that, they will get medical for the rest of their life. And in addition to that, they'll get any and all raises that come to that classification for the rest of their life. And we were successful in getting that. So that's great. And the law says, you know, if the drivers see a flashing amber light, they're supposed to give a free rite of passage. And then we went after an assault bill, because we had a lot of folks in our Caltrans that testified with us at the Capitol in regards to being assaulted. And I think a lot of drivers and things like that going down the highway, they see it as a nuisance. Yeah, and you know, oh boy, here's another roadblock, you know, it slows down their travel. So they've had bottles of pee thrown at them. They've had people jump out of a car and hit them with jumper cables. They've had guns pulled on them. And so it does put me, I believe, in the driver's seat to work with my reps. Mike here is over law enforcement.
Actually, in fact, because of Tim's experience with the state, in our city of Stockton, they had a new HR director a couple of years ago that had worked with Tim at the state. So Tim actually sat in on some of our negotiations to help smooth that through, because they had a relationship at the state. So that was pretty helpful. We had an incident this morning around 2 o'clock in Calaveras County where one of our officers from Angels Camp was involved in an officer-involved shooting, and they were assisting the sheriff's department. One of the deputies was shot during that incident, but he's okay now, which is good. But what OE3 does, one of our reps was there within an hour. We made sure there was an attorney there to help him, and so that's what OE3 brings to the table. We're there to help our members get through whatever they're involved in, and that's like hot off the wire today incident. And that's just one of the things that we do, and that's what OE3 brings to the table. And that's why I came on staff, and when when the director was retiring and there was going to be a new senior rep, I applied for that. That's my story, and that's how I got on with OE3.
And that's exactly why I'd chosen Mike as a senior rep, because of his great background, his tenacity, his willingness to actually take on any task that I show him to do, and again, with his background, he understands the public employee side of it, whether it comes to maintenance, law enforcement, court issues. So couldn't have picked a better person to have that seat, and I really appreciate the job he does for this membership.
You had mentioned diversity of our membership. Can we talk a little bit about some of the different units that we represent? Because I'm not sure the greater public really knows what a public employee does. They're often the unsung heroes, the people who are maybe not as visible as the construction side, but they're the ones out there doing the things that keep our communities running. Can we talk a little bit about some of those diverse units and the diverse locations of some of our units?
Sure. Like for me, I had some diverse ones. I have the Port of Stockton Police Department. And then when you go to Stanislaus County, one that's really unique is I have the District Attorneys and Public Defenders, which is the Attorney Association for Stanislaus County. And they've been with us for about 30 years. And then you move down south toward Fresno, we have the Fresno Airport. One that you were recently helping us with, Mandy, is up in Groveland. So we have the Groveland Community Service District, which is right at the gate, I think it's 26 miles from the Yosemite Park. So they're in really cool locations, and they do a lot of cool things. And even people don't realize, like, if you go down to City Hall to license your dog, and if you're, like, say, in the city of Oakdale, that's one of our members that's helping you at the desk.
Right. So we have animal control officers, we have transit bus drivers, we have Golden Gate Bridge drivers. We're involved in transit. Moving down into the Bay Area, I know we represent a very large portion of workers within the health system, the hospital system. So nurse case managers, even some hospital chefs, janitorial staff. Am I missing anyone else unique?
Well,
There's a lot out there.
well,
Actually, like locations too, like Mike DeAnda out of this district here, he goes up to Plumas County and Alpine County, and so he has the gamut up there, everything from clerical to courts to road workers, equipment operators, correctional officers, right, so we have quite a diverse group.
The footprint that we make for Local 3 with all these classifications and all these entities that we do represent makes us well known out in California. In the public employee division, we also have, again, these lobbyist issues. A lot of the processes and a lot of our negotiations are politically driven. And so we have a great opportunity at that point, but two, we have lobbyists, Tim Crimmins, Chris Snyder from Local 3, the political director of Local 3, and we work very close together at the Capitol, making sure that the politics are surrounding that. When we have that opportunity to touch the political side of the house so much, it does give Local 3 a bigger status in the politic world. We have the International Union of Operating Engineers that also has lobbyists that work with us. And so we work together politically, which makes us a very powerful political, I guess for lack of better words, a machine. But we are out there.
Whether it's or protections, there's a direct link between our public employee membership and what happens with politicians and legislation. One of the benefits of being a Local 3 member is having that political connection, having the lobbyists, having an understanding of labor law and how it affects public employees. And Local 3's Voice of the Engineer program is a way to bring in the membership to actually see the relationship between politics and how our work conditions can either be improved or, made worse.
Officers down to the business agents and things, we do wear politics on our sleeve, and I think as we should. Some people are offended by that, but I believe it's a very important piece to this organization that when we go out there, we talk to them about the issues at hand. We do talk to them about vote in your pocketbook. What benefits your family and financially in your pocketbook is a super important piece to this.
It's an uphill battle for public employees in California because you are at the mercy of state and county coffers, and that's directly related to the economy and or whatever pet projects they want to spend their money on.
Right.
So you're a voice of the worker that wouldn't have one if they weren't involved in a union, and you're also, and you mentioned your influences of, Russ and Dan, key skilled negotiators at the table with these people who bring in, these paid lawyers and have their own sort of goal or aim with what they want to do with their monies. But in terms of the uphill battle, we faced a pretty difficult decision in 2018 with the Supreme Court's ruling on Janus. Can you talk a little bit about what that meant and then how we reacted?
Members on the public sector now can opt out of paying their dues. All these things we've been talking about, the politics and the lobbying and all of these things take economics. They take money, and that's how we support that and fund that is through the dues structure. We have quite the difference between the non-union side of the world and the union side of the world is that we do have this political machine that moves forward. A lot of the members, there's members out there that maybe not agree with our politics, but again, if we go back to vote in our pocketbook, Operating Engineers has always been an organization. We don't care if you're an R or a D behind your name. As long as you support labor in itself, we support you, and we'll bring you in-house and you can help us with our issues. Janus did come along, and now what that means is folks can actually work as a public employee and opt out of paying union dues. Now, as an organization, are still obligated to represent that individual if they opt out. We try to push for them to be a member, not just for the economics or the money side of that piece of it, but so they can be a part of our organization because there's strength in numbers. When I say strength in numbers, when all of us come together, we've all heard that term, strength in numbers, it's very true. When your employer understands that, the majority, or if not all, are dues-paying members.
There's influence in that.
Absolutely influence, and they gotta kind of more walk the line, okay? And so what that membership buys you, though, is the opportunity when we come to the negotiation table is to have input on what we actually put on the table as proposals to their employer. And it allows them to come into our union meetings and at the union hall and things like that.
It allows them to vote on their contract.
Yes, to have a voice, that's correct. And it's super important. Again, I believe at the end of that discussion, when we're all together as one, we're going to be much powerful out there. And that's driven as this whole organization. Now, this Janus decision has not hit the private sector, and I hope it never does. The door is open. And
It didn't really, though, to sort of that educational campaign
Yes.
and authorization cards that were
Yes.
mailed out, it didn't really impact us in the way it maybe did some other public sector unions.
No, that's exactly right. And so we actually went forward with that, just like you said, the educational piece of it. And we educated our membership throughout the state, and we come to find out that we thought there, as a lot of labor organizations did go backwards in membership count, we actually advanced. I believe that through that educational piece, people are educated to say, hey, look, we're better off being represented by a union than not. And I think there was a fear there that if, that went away, and that was part of our campaign, is to educate them on that, not to scare them, but just to educate on the fact that, hey, if there's no more labor representation, nobody at the Capitol, nobody fighting the politics, and all these different things.
Where will that leave you?
That's right. And I mentioned the non-union side of the world, if you will. They also benefit from all of the work that we do politically.
We raise the wages for them and the protections for them.
Absolutely correct. And so at the end of the day, those folks are also protected by what we do and our actions and the monies we do spend over there. I hope to see that this continues to grow, and it shows the politicians that foolishness, of trying to pass these laws or national right to work, that it gets pushed aside and the people stand up and they say, no, we're not going to accept that, and we want to be represented. Because if you're not represented, non-union side of the world, it's kind of tough to go over to your boss and say, hey, put on your best suit and say, I need a raise.
Right, or even a simple thing, I need a new pair of safety boots.
Yeah, no, that's right, Mike. Yeah, that's right.
They're not going to give it to you if they don't have to.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah, the PDPA.
That's something I wanted to bring up. For those for those public employees who are on the fence about becoming a dues payer member, Mike, can you talk a little bit about why they would want to do that?
And that kind of ties in with the story I mentioned about my attorney group, them being attorneys. They look at us as we are a resource for them. And that's what I always try to explain to our members. You have resources with OE3. You have a business rep. In our organization, Tim has us, we have a backup. So if you call me and you can't get a hold of me, like what happened this morning, to get a hold of my coworker, he handles it for me until, I can get on scene or whatever. So you have that ability, that one-on-one communication 24 hours a day. You have access to a health plan. One of our biggest, nemesis right now are law firms. They try to steal our members, and they say, hey, you'll have our lawyer, and it doesn't work that way. And so with OE3, we have our own legal department. We have, our political department. We have our PR department. You came out recently to Groveland for us and helped us with a story there. So, these are all resources and lobbyists. I have the 911 dispatch center in Modesto that they were out of contract for 5 years, and they had a law firm. And so they came to me. I went and worked with them and brought them on board, and we got them a contract. But the other thing that we did for them is there was a bill up in Sacramento to give them the same medical things that first responders do, because dispatchers, a lot of people don't realize that, if you're a dispatcher, you're telling people where to go, but if the person you're telling where to go gets shot or they're involved in something and you hear that coming across the radio, you can't just reach out there and help them. And so there's a lot of stress in that. So by getting this bill passed in Sacramento, they now have access to workers' comp stress issues and stuff, which OE3 signed on and supported. I went up to the Capitol, and it was a good thing. And you have that access, as a member of OE3. And if you're not a member, you don't have that access. You can't even vote on your contract. and you can't even give input into it, which is just silliness.
What you pay in your union dues as a public employee member would be pennies on the dollar to what it would cost you to have all of these things in a
Absolutely.
one-stop shop. Legal fees, lobbying, public relations, a negotiator, and then being part of a negotiating team to collectively bargain your agreement.
And a good example too is my city of Stockton. I had my chief steward, Ralph Handel at the time, was terminated. So we fought to get his job back. We went through arbitration. Won arbitration, the city refused to comply, took him to court, went to the appellate court. We won the appellate court. The city challenged it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, you need to follow what the appellate courts, everybody below us said to do. We got his job back, and so now Ralph is a rep at the Reno office for OE3. And that just showed you, and you talk about the cost, that was probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, that if you would have been represented by a law firm or without anybody, you'd be paying yourself.
I just heard recently about the city of San Francisco, 2 employees. They were putting laborers on their equipment, and these two both are going to receive a check for $55,000 each in back pay for what the union won for them in an arbitration.
Yeah.
These are things that individual people can't handle on their own with the such a low cost of legal representation and arbitration and all those things that a union provides. So we talk about other avenues for members. What is a steward?
So a steward, when I became a member, I was unsure really what the stewardship was about, and so a lot of the folks, I worked at a gravel plant at the time as a mechanic, they kind of pointed down and said, let the young guy do it. Whoa. And so a steward is somebody that will help the union, be another arm, if you will, for union reps and this organization. They will go around the job site and kind of just not oversee the job, but oversee kind of what the labor issues are on the job. If, like you mentioned, labor's running equipment, that's a big one. So a steward is also a person that will get picked through the business manager of this organization. What we do is we look for an individual that is not self-serving, but is willing to have a heart for the whole membership that they work with, and willing to bring their issues to the table. And so as a steward, you will also accompany their business rep, like Mike Eggener here, at the bargaining table. And so you'll be able to bring those grievances, if you will, to the bargaining table, things that are going on at the job that are taking apart the union, labor's on equipment. That's it. That's a simple one that comes to mind for me. Anyways, and then also with that stewardship, you hold a responsibility to, like I said, make sure that the members everything's okay. And it's not only just labor issues. I became a steward at a very young age. I was, I think, 20 years old. And so when I became a steward, I reached out even further than just, there's somebody on another piece of equipment. Of course, I reported that to the union, and then the reps would come out and do it. But I reached across that, and also, there's folks that have personal issues, and I would sit down and talk to them with that, because I believe to have a happier employee, a happier member is going to represent this organization better, if they come to work. And I'd sit down and talk to them about things and help them through those, even the personal things that was going on at home. So then their employer could look at them and still say, they're productive and doing a great job, again, a union member, right? And that's what we stand for. It's a very educated workforce. We'll come out there and really do production, whether it's law enforcement, people at the courts or hospitals or construction side of the house, to be very productive. And that's... And
if I could jump in, I agree with you there. One of the things that I learned from Nate Tucker when he was our district rep in District 30, the hub, that he always would tell our members at our meetings, you need to be a good employee. You need to work hard. OE3 wants employees that are working hard, that know their job, and that's part of it. And that's what I use my stewards for. They're not only are they looking for, violations, but also making sure, hey, that the members are towing the line. Hey, you're supposed to be, you're an OE3 member. You need to be working hard and focusing on working hard, and not all the little minutia that's going out there. And so the stewards are really important. Being a rep that's got, around 18 units, I can't be there 24 hours a day. There are eyes and ears on the job sites because we don't work for those employers, and so they educate us on what's going on, but also, kind of help the members, hey, make sure you stop doing what you're doing and do the right thing, at the same time.
We have a need often for stewards, and I know that we provide some steward training.
Yes.
I know that Mario, I think Brito put on a Bay Area steward training where about 200 people attended, and it was all just about these things, how you're the eyes and ears on the ground for what the workers need, and that you're the liaison between the union and the member.
Right.
So it's a very valid and necessary position for those of you out here who are wondering, what a steward actually does.
That's right, and as far as the steward, we have the steward training, but also we ask, all members, if they want to be a part of that training, they can just come to be educated on what's going on, or maybe labor laws and different things that we touch when we're going through the training. And again, that's just an education piece. Start the footsteps, if you will, to become a steward. But again, it's an educational piece. Some people don't want to be a steward. They don't want to be in the limelight. So they just come to that class and then they get educated. Wow, and it's pretty powerful that way. Again, makes us a stronger workforce out there.
And that's one of the hardest things on the public side that I run across, is that if you work for a smaller entity, every entity has its own political animal there, all the elected folks. They all have their own agendas. And so when you're a public employee, you're one of the few employees that actually can elect your own boss.
Yeah, that's a
Right.
great point to make.
And
crazy.
so a lot of public employees are very hesitant in getting involved because there are retaliations, and there are employers that are very slick in being able to retaliate against employees in such a way they're in a gray area where there's no specific violation of a law or something that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And so our public employees sometimes are very hesitant to get involved in things. And that's been an education thing that we've tried to do, is try and get our groups involved politically, but also don't be afraid to speak up. If you have a memorandum of understanding, which you'll hear MOU or a contract, that's an agreement between the employees and the union and the employer. So if you've agreed to do something, they've agreed to do something as well. So if they're going to hold you accountable, you need to jump in and say, hey, look, mister, through your rep, you don't have to jump on them yourself. Let us do the jumping and, just hold them accountable. And that's a hard concept sometimes, and I don't understand that. Why our members sometimes they miss that. They're afraid, and I understand that because...
Well, it's like fighting against your boss. I mean, do you have to have how do you do that?
How do you do that? Exactly right. So imagine if you're not a union member trying
How
to do that.
helpless you would feel.
You would be.
You guys help them, walk them through that process,
Right.
and it's a legal process that's binding. So we talk about a lot of uphill battles that we face as public employees and some of the challenging public city governments that you have to deal with. Mike, let's talk a little bit about the City of Stockton.
So City of Stockton is a unique city. I think it's the 13th largest city in the state. We have a couple hundred employees there. We have 3 bargaining units. We have the utility water district, we have the operations and maintenance group, and then we have the supervisor group there, and then we have the public works group. So the issue with Stockton is when Joe Centella was still on staff, he had them and he transitioned me over to them, and it was right during the bankruptcy. So, and that was an ugly event. We spent almost every day up in Sacramento going through the court process. And what was interesting is to watch all the media that was there, because the big thing was about the pension, how, hey, they're going to cut our pensions from us. Because the employees there, if people don't realize, took a 38% wage and benefit cut during the bankruptcy. The City of Stockton brought in a special law firm and they gutted the contracts, their memorandums of understandings of different things. And we're still fighting issues from that. But so we're in court, me and my coworker Darren Seymour are in court every day watching this, and the media's there with their little laptops. And the judge starts talking about the pension. He goes, well, technically, I could affect the pension. With all of a sudden, boom, you saw all the keys flying on there, and then I get a news alert. Judge is going to take the pensions away from employees in Stockton. Totally not what was said. So we went through that. Since I hate this number here, but since February of 2019, I've filed 20 grievances against the City of Stockton for different things. And about 8 of them have gone to arbitrations, and like Ralph Handel, our rep in Reno, his was one of the cases, they would rather take us to court than work with us, which is a sad, sad thing. And then recently, we had one of our water guys shot in Stockton. So he was with another employee, a pretty brand new employee driving down the street, a vagrant kind of guy, stepped out in front of the vehicle, they slowed to let the guy cross, and then they drove a little ways, pulled over the park, and suddenly there's some shots rang out, and it went through the car door and hit him in the leg. I mean, so now, our police units, you kind of figured that you could be shot at, as an officer, but when you're a water guy, that is so traumatic. I mean, I called him, as soon as I could, I called him and talked to him, make sure he's all right. And even the director out there has never talked to the employees about what happened. They never had a meeting about it. So what we did is I sent a formal request to have a meeting to talk about the safety protocols out there. And so they're supposed to be setting up a meeting for next week to go over that issue, but that's so traumatic. But Stockton is, for whatever reason, with the bankruptcy, they treat their employees really, really bad. They have a huge turnover. Wage-wise, they're not that good, but like I said, to lose 38% during bankruptcy was crazy. And the city took it even farther by gutting language from the contracts that would be helpful, which they didn't need to do. They did it anyway. They took the retirement from the retirees there, and that was approved through the bankruptcy.
Have they recovered any of that? I mean, they're moving up slightly, but not the 38% they lost.
Yeah, we're never going to get that back. Never get that back over the time frame. But to lose it at that level was just nonsense.
I think you had said, Tim, that the reason they aren't allowed to do paperwork in like public areas at night because the city's decided that it's bad for the local businesses to have the maintenance guy like out front. Looks like he might be writing a ticket, and so they have just been conditioned to like go over to like secluded areas and do their paperwork, and then this guy, gets shot doing that, just trying to do his job in the middle of the night.
That's exactly right. And so through that process that Mike and I have worked, but Mike has really set up to review their safety protocol, if you will. If there's an incident similar to this, we did this with the state of California as well, is we're going to have a meeting with this employer. We're going to ask them that they would, when they have an incident, a critical incident, that they would bring the membership back into their yards, review safety protocol, talk about what happened that day, if anybody needs counseling or those types of things, and make it about those folks and make sure that the employer is paying attention to their employees and that those employees feel like they're cared. Yeah, supported is a great word. So Mike and I are putting together a game plan to go talk to this employer, and we're going to push that agenda. Mike mentioned all the grievances that he has to file on those issues, and the grievance process is set up so you will resolve grievances at its lowest level. And there's some that you can't, and some that you have to take to court, like Ralph's, okay? But at the same token, there's a lot of these grievances that are just easily, they could be resolved across the table. They're just really, they're simple issues, okay? And there's, so in my opinion, like Mike, you said, since the bankruptcy, a lot of the folks, when that happened, left the state, or excuse me, the city. They were replaced with a lot of maybe conservative thinking and not willing to work with unions so much, which has cost the union and the city lots of money for litigation. Me and Mike are going to utilize this issue to push this employer back into a mindful or rightful thinking, labor kind of a thinking. We're really going to press our foot on this one and get this moving forward, because look, we're not there to punish the employer, but at the same time, we need a relationship with that employer so we can better represent our membership. This employer needs to get in line with that idea. We're not out there to have a battle all the time. We just need to come to the table and resolve issues. And right now, they have totally shown that they're not willing to do that.
It's interesting, like Stockton, I don't understand the mindset, because I have a grievance right now that's going through the process that involves taking our work and contracting it out. So I saw that it was on the city council agenda for approval, so I got on the city council because everything's by Zoom right now because of the COVID, and asked the council, hey, please don't approve this right now. We have a labor disagreement. Let us work this out first before you do this. City manager jumped on and basically told the council that he runs the city through them, and that if you gave in to the employees, you would be taking the power away from the director. I mean, how is that working together? And then the next thing I know, the city attorney is chastising the council because City of Stockton is a charter city, which is another layer of bureaucracy, and telling them that if they were to side with the union, that they could be in violation of the city charter and sanction.
That's not true.
That's not necessarily true. Instead of wanting to work with us and talk to us about it, they don't. They would rather us push it all through.
They just maybe have like an anti-union.
But what's sad is there are some really good folks in HR, but it all comes down from that's why I say all our different entities have elected officials.
That are different.
Right, and to jump away from Stockton, like Groveland Community Service District, was one during the negotiations a few years ago. They have their own elected board. One of the directors decided, hey, why don't we get out of the pension plan and we'll give them a 401k. So first of all, they're in CalPERS, and there's a penalty for moving out of there. And for them, I think it was $13 million. So they'd have to pay that penalty. But the other issue, which I thought was kind of interesting, and this guy was supposedly an accountant, said, well, if you have a 401k, we'll give you $5,000 a year for the first couple of years. And then when you retire, you can take that money and go to Europe and have a vacation.
Ooh.
And I said, and so when I come back, I won't have a retirement to live on then.
Wow.
So what we did some research with one of the activists up there and found that there was actually an act of Congress that forbid them to go privatize, because they wanted to privatize the place as well. And because their water comes from the Yosemite Valley, there's an act of Congress that says that water cannot be sold by a private entity. It has to go through a public entity. So we were able to block that.
Yeah.
Because of an old act of Congress.
Right. No, just imagine if they were non-union.
They would know nothing.
They would
about
have no
any
idea
of that.
all
They'd be
this
like,
kind of stuff.
all right,
Right.
401k sounds good. I'll take a vacation when I get back.
Yeah, that was so nonsense.
Well, and Mike mentions, about the contracting out. That's a big battle we do have with a lot of our cities and counties and state. And these entities, as public employees, they have allocations for X amount of workers and classifications. When they go and contract, that's why it's such an issue for us. When they contract this work out, it's taken away work from our folks that work in these public sectors. Also, it costs that public sector, 3 times as much to go out and get a private company to come in and do the work.
Right.
And again, I say that they're allocated for X amount of dollars. Then it starts cutting into our pensions, pensions and things like this. So then we end up with all these pension problems, and they can't fund them and things. So that's why we really try to hold their feet to the fire. And I don't mean try. We really hammer on that issue. That's a big problem for us. And that City of Stockton will get them to walk the line, Mike.
So there will be some listeners today who might be hearing loud and clear that being a Local 3 public employee is a pretty cool thing, that there's a lot of amazing benefits involved in that. If there are people out there who work for city and county departments and they want to know how they can get their unit organized, what are their next steps for that?
They would contact, obviously, the Local 3 office, and there's many of them throughout Reading and Eureka.
So it depends where they're located.
It does, yeah. And so contacting the office there and talking to an organizer. We have many organizers in this organization. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a public employee organizer. We do have public employee organizers and private sector, and both of them are educated on the process. So, if you were interested in doing that with your employees that you work with, that you would probably keep that to yourself. I would, if I was at a work site, I would keep that under my hat, if you will, just so that doesn't get out in front of you and then the boss finds out and then he'll put the big squash to it right away.
Isn't that illegal?
It is very illegal, but again, if you're not represented, they can certainly do it, and there's not a lot of recourses. There is if you go through Department of Labor, but it's a long journey, and you probably won't have a job at the end of that day.
All right, yeah, union busting.
Yeah. So anyways, so that's right. That's exactly what that is. So I would say contact the union hall, talk to an organizer at the Local 3 Union Hall, get a couple key people at that work site that you can trust to have these conversations with. And again, it's not to keep us, well, it is to keep a secret, but again, not to get people in trouble. The employer will come at you very hard because they want to keep their own rules going, right? They don't like your blue shirt maybe and that you're out the door, I don't know. But they can really be very, I don't know, frivolous on that kind of stuff.
But you're right, the first thing is you need to reach out and contact somebody. All our reps can help organize. That's one of the things Tim's done. We've tried to, we call the organizing in our own units. Like I have units that have a small number of members and a large number of people covered by the contract, and so I'm constantly trying to organize those people. So every rep can do that. You just got to, the first thing is to reach out to somebody, or even like through you, Mandy, you've sent us contacts before.
That's true.
Where they've sent an email to the local, that way.
That website is
OE3.org, where you can find our contact information, and there's a contact us section there, and that email goes directly to me, and I can send that out. So
Yes,
a lot of department information, you can find phone numbers and information on
Right, and there's a, thank you, Mandy, and there's a lot of folks out there that believe, maybe it's an older way of thinking, I don't know, but paying union dues, oh man, I'm not paying the union dues. For $66 a month right now, you can get representation of everything we just talked about, everything from politics to legal to ground zero at the job site with your rep for cheaper than a cup of coffee every day. So you could get that, and that money will get you better working conditions, wages, benefits, and those things. I believe as a state, we can be much stronger as we come together and make that bigger footprint for Local 3. Then once we establish that, again, the politics follow, and it does make us all stronger at the end of the day, and we can demand more of what we need as working women and men out there. So.
Well, any huge organizing victories, Mike, that you can recall? I know we're currently involved in trying to organize about 250 hospital care workers through it's the Alameda Health System. So we, time to time, are involved in these big organizing drives. Do you recall of any one where we were very successful in organizing a larger unit or bringing new people into the fold?
I don't know so much. Well, about 56 people was the one. The dispatch center in Modesto was a pretty good one. That one took about a year to facilitate, reaching out and meeting with their board and getting them to move over to OE3 and holding an election and all that. So that was pretty good. And then them being on a contract for 5 years, and we got them a contract, and then plus we helped with the legislation up in Sacramento to help them. So that was pretty good right there.
So obviously our public employees are all essential workers, they're all frontline workers. They've been working right in the heart of the pandemic when everyone else was working remotely. Can you talk a little bit about what you did to create safety protections for them, and then also how you kept communication open with them when we were all kind of on lockdown? Mike?
What we did, everything kind of went to virtual meetings. We went out as an organization and got masks for our members at the very beginning because they couldn't find the PPEs, and so we went out and purchased them and got masks for our members. And one of the things that's going on right now is with the president signing the American Rescue Act of 2021, there's money set aside for essential employees. All our public employees, I bet you 100% have been designated as essential employees because they're, doing whatever they do. They got to run these cities and these counties. And so there's money that's in there for them. The employers are not mandated to give it to them, but we've been helping them, educate them that is one way that they can thank the employees for being there. I mean, because a lot of them started working remotely. A lot of them, were quarantined because they were exposed time after time again.
Yeah, they're out in the public every day.
So that's one of the things that we're doing with the COVID right now is really educating the employers on the American Rescue Plan.
That's huge.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And if I could add one point, I know our business manager, Dan Redding, when COVID hit, there was a lot of confusion on how we could work and work safely and things like that. I know our business manager, Dan, went to, with other labor organizations, to the governor, Gavin Newsom, and explained to him that how we were able to work safely in a COVID type of situation and was able to keep the doors open for our membership, to continue to work. That was a big milestone coming into this COVID piece. There was, again, as you all know, there was a lot of people that were laid off, and our membership wasn't.
Yeah, in a large way.
All the way from the private side to the public side. So.
But on that note, because all these different entities have their own political animal, they have their own budgetary constraints as well, because they're not all the same, because they all have different tax bases. So one of the things that we as reps try to do is work with our employers in the negotiation process, understanding that your tax base is based off tourism, like in Tuolumne County, and they're not getting any tourists. Is it really a wise choice to go up there and negotiate and try and demand raises and demand this and the other thing? It's not. So we try to work with the employers and help them through this crisis. And our members have been really good about it. The biggest thing has been the quarantine issue, and that's because we're all at the whim of the CDC and the political views on that. A lot of things were learned, like Tim, what he's tried to do for the reps is make sure they have laptop computers, a simple thing, so that we have remote access, the ability to do these virtual meetings, And so that's been really, and the business manager and all the officers have been real supportive of that, helping us, hey, you guys work remotely from your home if you can, and it's been, I think got more emails and phone calls during that time working from home than I did when I'm in the office.
Isn't that crazy?
So, but that's good though.
Yeah.
That means that people are communicating, and that's the key thing is you got to communicate. You got to get involved. If you don't get involved, I don't want to hear your complaint. I hate to say that, but that's the reality.
A union is just as strong as how much you put into it. You want to get something out of it, you've got to put something into it. And we don't mean financially.
Because we're all individually the union. We're one big collective.
Yeah, and that's right, we are. And again, back to that footprint, we have 6 officers, and each one of these officers are in charge of different divisions of this organization. Steve Ingersoll, president, he is in charge of the public employee division, does an excellent job, so very supportive with the public employee division, as all the officers are. But it's really great to have that gentleman actually overseeing myself and the rest of this public employee
And I can tell you,
division.
when we have our district reps and our district meetings in Stockton, at the hub there, that when the officers come, they always come and talk to the public employee reps, and they give us the opportunity to give a report, which should be because we're part of the organization. And so I can tell you from first getting involved in OE3, like 31 years ago, the public employee side is bought in as part of the family, where you're not like it used to be, you felt like a stepchild in a way, because, this is a construction union, but we're all brothers in the union now. And it's a good feeling to see that. And I've seen that change over the years.
Brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Yes, brothers and sisters.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, both of you, thank you so much for coming today and shedding some light on the Local 3 public employee universe. It's very complicated. I don't envy your positions. All of these contracts are constantly going up for renegotiation, and you're in a million different directions, and there's so many rules, and there's so many different legislation pieces coming down the pike. And I work closely with a lot of your staff, and they're all doing just a fabulous job. And the active members in our public employee units are really like small little families spread throughout, and there's no question that the union is protecting them. So thank you for joining me today and just explaining. And if there are any questions, you can always go, like I said, to our website, OE3.org, on how to reach out to a public employee division or a district to find out more information on how to get organized into Local 3.
Thank you, and thank you, Mandy, for your support.
Yeah.
We can get 500 likes on this. Tim and Mike will be back.
Yeah, on the YouTube video, please like and subscribe.
Yeah.